What's going on, fellow A-plussers? It is I, your host, as always, Adam Perez, back once again with a brand new video for you guys today as we're set to go ahead and get into The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode number 5, also known as Chapter 21, titled as The Pirate. Sorry about the star-filled screen when I first came back on here live for you guys. I jumped out of StreamYard real quick to change one of my settings, and when I jumped back in, I forgot I had to add myself to the stream. So here I am. Hopefully everybody's having a fantastic week so far. It is in fact Thursday afternoon here out in Fort Worth, Texas. Got the opportunity to check out The Mandalorian episode number 5 for this third season as of yesterday, and went ahead and checked it out again this morning before going live with you guys. So listen, if you guys have any thoughts on this particular week's episode as we go through this, just simply remember these are just my A+ opinions, but at the end of the day, I always want to know yours. So let your thoughts be known on this particular episode in the comment section box below, or if you're in the live chat with me today, feel free to go ahead and bounce some of your thoughts off of me as we go through this particular week's episode. Another enjoyable episode here for The Mandalorian. I still really enjoyed the previous week. For me, that was by far probably one of the best episodes that we wind up getting so far. This one was pretty enjoyable for me also. I really enjoyed sort of all the characters, all the players that certainly took place in this episode. You know, Din Djarin and Grogu didn't necessarily get a lot of showcase, certainly at the beginning, but similar to what I had mentioned in last week's episode, you know, they've already done such a good job of heavily giving us a story for Din Djarin and Grogu over the past 2 seasons, even sprinkling him a little bit in the Boba Fett series too. So the idea of coming into season 3 here, even though he hasn't necessarily gotten a ton of sort of focus, really his mission has kind of already wrapped up, and we're very much building towards something. There is definitely an emphasis on something growing in the galaxy, whether that's the pirates and the pirate nation, whether that's the remnants of the old empire, whether that's other pockets of power or people that are trying to gain more power. There is certainly something brewing, and I kind of appreciate the use of season 3 of The Mandalorian to kind of reset a little bit, give us a brand new focus and a build up towards whatever the new mission is certainly going to be. And I think that's exactly what they've been doing so far in here. So for me, the really enjoyable aspect of this week's episode was certainly the world building, getting the opportunity to see so many moving pieces, so many moving characters that at the end of the day do have some sort of connective tissue to Din Djarin. So while he's not necessarily affecting things in that episode, the fact that we have been introduced to these characters through him and still managed to come full circle and focus on him, I think definitely works for me. The idea of seeing Captain Teva again was pretty fantastic. Carson Teva in here, getting the opportunity to see the return of the pirate Gorian Shard. I was a really big fan of seeing him the first time in the first episode, and there was a part of me that was kind of hoping that they would certainly utilize him again. So I thought they did an amazing job of bringing him back, even if this is going to be sort of another one-off. Maybe we never see him again. The fact that they've established him sort of in the Star Wars universe makes me wonder, is he going to pop up again in like another novel somewhere, a short story inside of Star Wars Insider? You know what I mean? So a lot definitely goes into this world building here and introducing us to brand new characters. And I'm a sucker for it, honestly. I truly am. So I definitely appreciated what this particular episode did. So yeah, those are some of my pros in regards to why I really enjoyed this episode. Before we get into the nitty gritty though, a couple of people did go ahead and make their appearance in here. First and foremost, we talked a little bit about Captain Teva, who we definitely have seen a few times already within this particular series. And we get to see him again here in this episode. You know, there are elements to this story where it makes me kind of wonder if Kathleen Kennedy's spinoff that she announced maybe a year and a half or so ago, the Rangers of the New Republic, that show never got off the ground due to everything that happened with Gina Carano and the Cara Dune character in general. And so it does make me wonder if they have then folded some of that story here into The Mandalorian. And I do wonder if Captain Teva, to a certain extent, is maybe filling in that void where Cara Dune certainly might have been. But I really kind of appreciate his involvement so far. His attachment to Din Djarin, understanding the Mandalorians a little bit, respecting them, I guess, right? I think it's just the idea that he approaches these people in a very respectful manner, and he's not sort of blinded by the idea of being part of the New Republic or anybody in the Empire. He really is kind of calling it straight down the line. And I appreciate him trying to locate and find Din Djarin in this episode to get him to be the one to go ahead and help out Grief Karga in here. And it did make me chuckle too. The idea that his infiltrator, if you will, was R5, which I believe is the droid that Din Djarin wind up picking up off of Tatooine. When I think of this, it just makes me wonder, like, wow, like, did the mechanic literally like feed Din Djarin this droid because it was a request of Captain Teva in the New Republic? Like, did the mechanic even know that R5 was certainly connected to the New Republic in such a current sort of way? Because it definitely feels as though Captain Teva used R5 to not only locate Din Djarin, but maybe that was kind of his plan all along in case he kind of needed him to needed Din Djarin's help at any particular point in time. So I thought that was actually pretty crafty in regards to how they managed that story so far for Captain Teva. But through Captain Teva is where we meet one of our fan favorite characters. If you were a big fan of Star Wars Rebels, we got our very first look at the live action debut of Zeb. Zeb was always a great character, the muscle of the group, great humor to certainly say the least, always told it certainly like it was. And the idea of Dave Filoni being able to bring another Star Wars character that he went ahead and helped establish in animated form in the live action, I think was brilliant. Clearly, I definitely wanted to see a little bit more of Zeb in this episode. But for me, I was just surprised that they pulled it off and in such a fashion to not make Zeb look like a complete idiot. I mean, I'm really impressed with the idea of adapting him from animation into live action. I think they did an incredible job on just his design. I'm kind of curious as to how much of his costume, if any, is practical effects with maybe a little hint of CGI from time to time. Like, I feel like the top portion may be kind of practical, but maybe if you look at like his lower half, maybe that's CGI. Who certainly knows? But I think they did an incredible job in here of bringing a character like Zeb to life. And it makes me wonder where else Zeb is going to pop up next, considering the fact that he's clearly part of the new rebellion, the New Republic, I should say, in some capacity or another. So Captain Teva in here really impressed me, and along with the appearance of Zeb. Look, we got it ourselves an Ahsoka series that's just right around the corner. I think it's set to go ahead and drop maybe sometime fall this year, or is that 2024? I can't remember the dates off the top of my head, but let me know your guys' thoughts, or if you have the release date or idea of when Ahsoka drops. But if Zeb is popping up here, there's a part of me that's got to think at some point in time, maybe he shows up in the Ahsoka series, because it's just all connected in that sense, especially with them all taking place within the same time period. You know what I mean? So really interesting stuff, man. And especially the idea that Captain Teva is the one that discovers that Moff Gideon didn't quite get to his location. Towards the end of this episode, we see that the New Republic transport ship was in fact broken into, and it looks as though Moff Gideon might have been captured, with the suggestion that the Mandalorians certainly might be responsible. Dun dun dun, right? So it does make one wonder, have we seen our infiltrator for working with the New Republic already, or is it a Mandalorian that has yet to be revealed to us? Or is this sort of a I don't want to say a hoax, but framing, if you will, maybe somebody trying to frame the idea that it was the Mandalorians that kidnapped Moff Gideon. What theory do you guys have in regards to who had captured or rescued Moff Gideon from the New Republic transport ship? I definitely want to know your guys' thoughts in the comment section box below. Marcelino says the Zeb cameo surprised. I was like, oh my god, yeah, I definitely would agree with you there. Marcelino says Kathleen Kennedy confirmed that the elements of Rangers of the New Republic will be incorporated into Mandalorian season 3. And I could definitely see that for sure, and I think they've handled it well. And I think it would also maybe suggest as to why we've even saw the Mandalorian and Grogu along with the armorer in something like Book of Boba Fett, right? Like, I think one of the things that we talked about was, why couldn't they have just picked up the story and the adventures of Grogu and Mando in season 3? Why did that necessarily have to be included in Book of Boba Fett? And it might have a lot to do with the idea that this season is just packed with so much levels of storytelling, longer episodes for sure, a focus more on the galaxy certainly as a whole, and something brewing and building up to something else, and it not just necessarily being a Din Djarin season. And if anything, I think they have done a great job of mixing those two elements and still certainly making it work for me. In this episode, we still even get the opportunity to see Elia Kane, the spy, from infiltrating the New Republic from Moff Gideon's ship. I'm assuming it was still orders from Moff Gideon to certainly have her infiltrate, even though she was certainly captured. She certainly is still doing the bidding of the New Republic. And I look, there's just something menacing about this lady, truly. Just menacing. The way that she holds herself, like she holds herself in a sense of like she feels like she's a Sith Lord or like a Sith apprentice in training or something like that. Clearly, she hasn't shown any signs of Force using, but she definitely comes across as very Sithy, if that's even a word to me, Sithy or very Imperial, to certainly say the least. So I think Elia Kane is definitely making a name for herself and an impact in this particular season for sure so far. So yeah, definitely elements of Rangers of the New Republic working their way here in The Mandalorian. And I'm here for it because I definitely love the idea of them creating a new mystery, suggesting the idea that there is something brewing out there, or all these pieces certainly connected. Where are we certainly leading to? And that definitely has my attention. So we'll see if the Empire makes its return. Is this the slow building of the First Order that we're seeing, or is there another Imperial pocket that's now trying to kind of garner some power? We'll definitely have to see, but I love the elements that they have certainly established here so far. But let's go ahead and talk really about this episode. These are really kind of my overall thoughts so far. But let's talk about Nevarro being overtaken. Again, we see Gorian Shard, the pirate here. Did I get an image of Gorian Shard for you guys? Where's Homeboy at in here? And what are your guys' feelings about Gorian Shard, certainly as a whole? I definitely hope that he pops back up in here, but he clearly has a bone to certainly pick with Grief Karga, talking about the idea that he killed his men. Now he's going to go ahead and shoot first as he winds up taking control of Nevarro. We see rain and destruction coming from his ship as he does his best to go ahead and take out the people of Nevarro and leave Grief Karga to fend for himself and pretty much run away and wind up requesting the help of the New Republic. So he also mentions that idea in here too that I thought was pretty interesting, that the New Republic can't even protect the mid-rim from the pirate nation, let alone the idea of the outer rim. And again, really suggesting just the political atmosphere that the universe certainly is in right now. Now that the Empire is gone, clearly the New Republic is trying to fend for themselves, keep some level of order, and is unable to do so as the pirates seemingly have found an opening to try and take control over some of the worlds within the mid-rim. And it does show you that the New Republic certainly has its hands full, to certainly say the least. So I think Gorian Shard definitely does play a significant role in this episode in regards to establishing what the government situation is currently like in here. But I don't think we're going to see him again after the end of this season. So we'll see if he pops up certainly anywhere else in that regards. Captain Tevan winds up locating Mando and really puts him up to the task of trying to save Grief Karga. So let's go ahead and talk about our two main characters in here. Din Djarin along with Bo-Katan, who Bo-Katan's journey continues to really impress me, but it's really Din Djarin in here to the rescue. The concept of him having to ask the Mandalorians for help based off of the Mando's last encounter with Nevarro, having lived on Nevarro, but very much in the sewers, in the gutters, in hiding. I think they just had an altercation with Nevarro within like the first season, sort of thing, right? So maybe not necessarily the most trusting of the Nevarrians, or even Nevarrians trusting of the Mandalorians. But based off of all the good work that Din Djarin has certainly done, he definitely has garnered himself certainly some support. People in the Coven definitely want to go ahead and certainly help him, and definitely with the help of somebody like Paz Vizsla, who steps up to go ahead and be the support system that Din Djarin needs to have, is able to go ahead and sort of rally the troops. So I thought it was pretty cool. And I also really appreciate the fact that Din Djarin, instead of just necessarily thinking about himself and the idea of, hey, Grief Karga offered me a piece of land to kind of live on and just live out sort of the rest of my days if I wanted to, let me kind of extend that over as far as an olive branch to all of Mandalore. Like anybody, any Mandalorians that have certainly helped. If we go ahead and certainly do this, we may in fact be rewarded with a piece of land. And Grief Karga definitely does not disappoint whatsoever. He definitely promises, and I love the line. He says, "Look, you guys may not necessarily have a place to certainly call your home, or you may not have your home anymore, but you do have a home, and you have a home here." And so I find that pretty interesting. Like for me, it's one of those things like, okay, like that sounds great when you think about it, but once the Mandalorians start moving in, first off, how big of a chunk of space is that from the lava fields to the canyons? And while the Nevarrians definitely feel okay with it based off of what they accomplished, 20 years down the line, 25 years down the line, is somebody going to try and overrun and take all of Nevarro, or take back some of the land that Nevarro eventually kind of gave away, right? So it definitely makes me fascinated to see the idea of the Mandalorians having to share a planet or a space with other people. And so I kind of want to see how long that lasts for. Look, I think the conflict as far as Mandalorians and Nevarros are over as of this season, but I'm just thinking long term in regards to how that certainly might work out. But Din Djarin has certainly helped them in acquiring a brand new home. But regardless of them having a place to now stay, they still have bigger implications. They still want to go ahead and take Mandalore. And I think that is definitely the next mission for Din Djarin and the rest of our Mandalorians here. As I feel like it's been building up to that moment anyway for quite some time. The idea that you want to take Mandalore. Now that you've gone back, seeing that, it's not as cursed as many people once thought, this is the opportunity to go ahead and take back your home world. So I am really excited to kind of see that happen. It's one of those things where I thought that would be sort of the climax of season 3. But considering the fact that we are already in the second half of this season, I think we only have maybe 3 episodes left. I do think that there is some building up to that moment before they take Mandalore. So there's a part of me that thinks maybe the taking of Mandalore will come in season 4, because it feels as though we are almost kind of building up towards a confrontation between Bo-Katan and Din Djarin. And I am really fascinated to see how that's going to play out. Everybody's been playing buddy buddy so far, right? Din Djarin welcoming in Bo-Katan. She certainly helped him when he needed help. Now helping her, bring her into the creed, help building her spiritual life and bringing her around people to go ahead and kind of create a new life and a new sort of mind state for Bo-Katan. So Bo-Katan definitely has a lot to be thankful for when it comes to Din Djarin. But the armorer, man, the armorer is really confusing me right now. I'm trying to figure out what her headspace is, especially considering where we left off with her last week, seemingly maybe not fully believing in Bo-Katan, in regards to what she stated about the mythosaur, but this time around, kind of embracing the concept that she might have seen a mythosaur and now kind of believing her. I am wondering what her motives certainly are. She's been very supportive of Din Djarin in the past, acquiring the dark saber, having to go and redeem himself in the living waters. Din Djarin has literally done everything that this woman has certainly asked of him. And yet the armorer now is kind of turning her attention over to Bo-Katan, in the sense of believing you are the one that should be leading us down that path. I am fascinated as to who is under this mask. When she's in the forge on Nevarro, and she's talking to Bo-Katan, she knows very much that Bo-Katan came from this Mandalorian world in the past, that she has lived not only on the planet, but she's lived very much a non-secular life, if you will, right? Hasn't really followed the creed in a very long time, but now she's kind of embracing it. And the armorer now seems to believe that because you've got somebody like Bo-Katan that has walked both sides of the religion, both sides of the beliefs when it comes to the Mandalore, that she's the one that should be, in fact, running the show here, or the one that could unite the Mandalorians that are in exile along with those that are in the coven and hopefully rebuild Mandalore. When she's standing in the forge and she's talking to Bo-Katan, reminiscing about what Mandalore was like, but then also hearing the armorer kind of um, really reveal sort of her rememberings of Mandalore. And if you look at Bo-Katan's reaction as the armorer is talking about these things, there's one, I think she's kind of surprised as to the armorer's past, the fact that she too once lived on Mandalore and remembers the same sights and smells so vividly, very familiar to that of Bo-Katan. It makes me wonder if Bo-Katan is kind of questioning who the armorer is. Does Bo-Katan even know? If they both grew up on Mandalore at some point in time, I gotta think that maybe Bo-Katan knows who's under. Maybe doesn't know who's under the mask, but if the mask is revealed or taken off, it would not surprise me if Bo-Katan knows who's certainly under that armor. So it definitely did fascinate me when they got to talking in the forge, because the armor seems to reveal things that we didn't know before. Her connection to Mandalore, a past that maybe she certainly might have with Bo-Katan. Again, this is just my own kind of speculation. But now we see her pushing Bo-Katan to go ahead and be the one to lead the Mandalores into sort of the new age. And this makes me wonder, is she going to then push for a battle between Djarin and Bo-Katan for the Darksaber? Because at the end of the day, look, you need that Darksaber. And I think right now it, in fact, is in the possession of Djarin. So I am kind of wondering how Djarin certainly feels about this, right? Like, I think we've been under the impression that if there's anybody that's going to redeem Mandalore and bring the people back, it's going to be this dude right here. But it seems as though the armorer certainly has other ideas. And so it does make me wonder where her loyalty lies. And I find this interesting too. When she's talking to Bo-Katan, she says, "We must walk the way together, all Mandalorians." And then she says again, "We must walk the way together, all Mandalorians." So are you suggesting that non-Mandalorians shouldn't be a part of this? Like, are you does that include foundlings, or are you suggesting like foundlings shouldn't be the ones that are um in control or the head of the new age of Mandalorians, right? So now we're getting some levels of like classism, it feels like, very much incorporated into the belief system of the armor. Like, are you making this shit up on the fly to accommodate what you need? Like, everybody's looking at her like, why does she have her helmet off? Like, nobody's told us that you have the ability to, because you've walked two paths, that you can take your helmet off. Sort of, it feels very much like the armor is just making shit up as she goes now, and has sort of her own motivations and certainly her own intentions. Maybe I'm tripping here, but the way that she emphasized "we must walk the way together, all Mandalorians," feels very much like she has no problem excluding non-true sort of Mandalorians. You know what I mean? But maybe I'm tripping, guys. Maybe I'm tripping. But it'll be interesting to see if Bo-Katan pops up in the remainder of this season, though, because it seems as though the armorer has kind of sent her on a mission to go ahead and find other Mandalorians in exile. So I'm kind of curious to know what you guys think. Again, this feels like it's ruffling some feathers. This little bit of this reveal of what the armor is certainly talking about here with Bo-Katan. I was not expecting this meeting of the minds between those two, but it definitely has left a little bit of a dark mystery, a dark cloud, if you will, over this season, and kind of see how this is going to turn out. But again, I want to know your guys' thoughts. Am I reading this into this wrong? Again, these are just simply my own speculation. We'll see exactly how it winds up turning out as the season progresses. But I want to know your guys' thoughts in regards to the idea of what's going on. Marcelino says the theory of the armor being Rook last of Maul's Mandalorian followers, I think, has been debunked with this episode. Yeah, I didn't even know what the current um theories were as to who the armorer certainly is, but definitely makes me feel as though she certainly has her own intentions and maybe not as true to the creed, or as we knew before, maybe she is true to the creed to a fault. You know what I mean? So it should be pretty interesting. Again, I think Emily Swallow's doing an amazing job so far in regards to this particular show, honestly. Was there something else on here that I wanted to go ahead and bring up? Also, I think that there was, but I'm drawing a blank right now. Maybe I'll come back to it. Give me one moment here. Let's see what else you guys are talking about. If Cara Dune ever comes back, which actress would you like to see take Gina Carano's place? I haven't really thought about casting. She's clearly around. I don't know if we're ever going to see Cara Dune again, but we'll see if they recast her at some point in time. Not going to lie, I'm getting a little tired of the aliens in Star Wars always being treated as villains or background characters. Yeah, I guess we have had a lot of villains in the sense of aliens so far. But I mean, look, we also got ourselves Elia Kane. You know what I'm saying? So there are elements to showcasing, Moff Gideon. We do have humans that very much are villains in this season. It just so happens that pirates, are aliens too. But I get what you mean. Marcelino says the Mandalorian makes sense to be human, but if Greek Cargo was an alien, nothing about his character would change. It can also help characters broaden their acting range. Marcelino says, I know we're getting the Ahsoka show, but when you think about it, she debuted in animation first before live action. Most alien characters get that spotlight previously debut in non-live action projects. Yeah, but I don't think there's anything wrong with debuting a brand new character in live action. It definitely works out for me in that sense. I think you can go forwards and backwards. Animation adapted into live action adapted into animation. I'm perfectly cool with it. I wonder what will happen with the pirate that escaped. Will we see more of him? Will he continue to be a villain? Will he turn over a new leaf, become a good guy? I have a feeling probably not. And I only say that because if Homeboy literally ran off on his own boss, the person that probably pays him, yeah, this man is definitely not to be trusted. His sense of loyalty is almost non-existent. You know what I mean? So I think at the end of the day, I would not surprise me if he pops back up in this season at some particular point in time before he meets his demise. But I don't see him turning over a new leaf, but I certainly could be wrong in that regards. But overall, guys, another really enjoyable episode here. If anything, I wanted to get back to the concept of who took Moff Gideon, and if there are any theories that are currently out there. One, I am kind of curious if maybe we haven't been introduced to her yet, but Sabine. I don't know if that's my first theory. Honestly, I'll tell you what my first theory is. Um, Sabine might be an option. Maybe she pops up in later on in this particular season. We've already seen Zeb. We know that they have no problem of adapting live action in animation into live action. Sabine may be somebody that they're holding off on the Ahsoka series, so it may not be Sabine. I don't necessarily think it's a framing to make it look like the Mandalorians did it and it was somebody else. There is a part of me that wants to believe that it is the Mandalorians. I do think that some sect of the Mandalorians certainly did this. The question I have is who? Um, Look, the armor and them have changed Coven locations before, convert locations before. When we come back into the season, they're at a brand new location, right? So who knows what they've definitely been up to. My primary suspect, though, and you guys might be able to crush this immediately, but this is my prime suspect in theory is Bo-Katan. And maybe I completely ruined this theory as I kind of explain it, because I was trying to explain it to my girlfriend yesterday and I thought, maybe that sounds stupid. But when we come into the season, Bo-Katan is alone. She's got nobody. She comes to us and tells us the excuse as to why she has nobody is that her army that she had, the people that she worked with, left her and abandoned her to become mercenaries and took everything with them. Is that a true story, though? Did maybe they abandoned her and went and rescued Moff Gideon? Or maybe she went ahead and rescued Moff Gideon for her own purposes, and she wants to present what happened to her in a completely different light when Djarin arrives. Her and Moff Gideon have a huge history together, especially when it comes to the Darksaber. Even though he doesn't have the Darksaber, people clearly want this man dead. And so I do wonder if Bo-Katan sent her people to go ahead and rescue Moff Gideon and sort of, hold him captive in the meantime. Granted, I don't necessarily know if Bo-Katan expected the journey she was going to find herself in the sense of helping Din Djarin. Like maybe she knew Din Djarin would reach out to her, but to the point of not only helping him, but then being brought into the creed and the convert, and then believing in what you're doing and possibly seeing a mythosaur sort of thing, right? I do think that things have definitely changed or happened to Bo-Katan, and she certainly was not expecting, but it would not surprise me if it's Bo-Katan and her crew that actually went ahead and kidnapped Moff Gideon for an eventual plan somewhere down the line. And who knows, maybe the idea now that the armorer is kind of putting Bo-Katan in that position of power, maybe her plan is kind of coming along full circle, even though the journey to get to that point maybe not necessarily have been what she originally planned for. But again, who knows? The armor has been kind of shady these days. Maybe it's Paz Vizsla. They did do the recap in Paz for this episode when Paz Vizsla said Moff Gideon should die for what he's done, right? So I don't think the armor and her convert are out of the conversation either. So I do think those are two solid options and theories there. So I'll land on either one of them, but there's a part of me that wants to lean Bo-Katan, but I'm perfectly okay with being wrong and it being the armor and her people. But I want to know your guys' thoughts. Do you guys have a theory as to who went ahead and rescued Moff Gideon? Is he happy wherever he's at, or is he still in captivity, just not with the New Republic? Definitely go ahead and let me know your guys' thoughts. So I just wanted to get that theory out of the way before we wrapped up and continued this. Marcelino says Star Wars Rebels showcase Mandalorians who were loyal to the Empire, so maybe the remnants are the ones who freed Moff Gideon. Yeah, it could be maybe a completely different crew of Mandalorians that we haven't met before that are loyal to the Empire, or maybe there are some people that are already infiltrated within this convert or even in Bo-Katan's people that might have been doing that, or maybe went rogue. Who certainly knows? But some great theories, to certainly say the least, and we'll see how this season plays out. But guys, listen, at the end of the day, these are just my A+ opinions. I always want to know yours, so let me know your thoughts on this particular week's episode of The Mandalorian in the comment section box below, and we'll definitely continue this conversation throughout the week until next week's episode. But until then, guys, do me a big favor. As always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. May the Force be with you. This is the way. Bye.